I was really curious for each of you about your experience socially in your various wards or communities. What your social...
And Carol Lynn talked a bit about this.
Yeah, she talked about feeling, I think, very supported in her own ward. But I'm kind of curious, so you can expound if you want to, Carolyn. I know you kind of already addressed that, but it's this idea of, do you feel alone? Do you feel different? Do you feel, when you go, do you feel this sense of kinship with the people around you when you attend church in your church communities? And we'll start with you, Carolyn.
Yes, I do. And it maybe would be in a couple of categories. There are quite a few women in my ward who've approached me and said, Sister Pearson, can I talk to you about something? I've been reading such and such, and I really want to talk to you about this issue that's really, really important to me. So I know that there are maybe a dozen women in my ward who have some significant questions. And so I know I'm never alone when something might come up. And of course, I'm highly appropriate in whatever I might say in a church setting. Mm-hmm. But then also, I feel a bond to the women, well, and to the men who are there as more traditional, as non-questioning people who are just there. And I love to see the young men holding their babies in our ward, and many that I really have reason to believe are 100% Orthodox and not questioning, because I just love to see the goodness in action, and I see it a lot just in the ordinary people in my ward. So I guess on those two levels, I feel very comfortable sitting in my ward. Yeah. And in Relief Society, I'm the one who always stands up when I want to make a comment, and the whole room turns around, because I'm the only one that stands up, and I encourage people to speak louder. But I always push the conversation a little bit forward. And I would never say anything to embarrass the teacher. In fact, my bishop has thanked me for not bringing my major issues to church. I say important things, such as a Relief Society lesson about the nature of God. I'm the one who stands up and says, I want to remind all of the women here that we are limited by our language. And when we speak about our divine source, please know that we come from a source that is as absolutely as much female as male. And I'm the one that they kind of look to say things like that. Mm-hmm. But I always try to say them in a way that's not going to embarrass anybody, mm-hmm. or make anybody upset. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of my style and my appreciation for the various kinds of people that I do feel comfortable with in the work.
Yeah, it's great. How about you, Jana Spangler?
Yeah, for me, this is something that changes all the time. Mm-hmm. I think when my shelf first broke, I felt very alone. I mean, you just imagine you are the only one going through this. And, mm-hmm. I had not found the podcast universe. I did not know that anyone else was out there that was going through this and still attending. Like, I just mm-hmm. thought anyone who felt like this was out. So I felt it was very, very lonely. And after the first year, I actually did out myself. It was not pre-planned, but during a testimony meeting, I got up and outed myself. And I was shocked at how many people came to me afterward telling me they were in the same place. Thank you for saying it, because they no longer felt alone. But the people that I know are also still quite quiet. I'm the only one who seems to talk about it. So in that way, it still feels lonely, because I feel like so many people just assume I'm the only one. Mm-hmm. It does feel a little, I don't know. it's difficult for me at times, for sure. And I do feel loneliness. But what I've also noticed is, and it's not just the people who are going through this, but the relationships with people who have been open and are willing to talk about this, I feel like those relationships go way deeper than I ever would have had with them before.
Right.
And I've really just had some rich friendships and rich relationships come out of saying it. So, I didn't plan it. I did not anticipate what it would do. And it really has kind of felt like many people have maybe taken a step back from me, and many others have taken a step forward. And so it's been a mixed bag. And, yesterday I was having a really hard moment and talking to my sister about how alone I felt. So I still have those moments. It's a really mixed bag.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah. How about you, Jana Riess? What's your kind of social experience? How do you feel in your ward and your community?
Well, this is the longest that I've ever lived in any ward. I've been here for about 11 years, and I feel really lucky to be here. I live in Cincinnati. We are in a pretty urban ward that also has some suburbs in the middle, so it's kind of a mix. And we have also our share of issues. There's a lot of work to be done where I live. And I think that helps, actually. I think it helps that I don't live in Utah and that we are in need of every hand on deck where I live. And my contributions have always been valued, or at least I felt that they've been valued. I would say I have a rule as a writer that I don't write about things that happen in my ward. Unless the people did something amazing, in which case, I could maybe feel free to write about how amazing they are. But if someone has said something that I disagree with, I don't put that out there in public. I don't talk about it on a blog or a podcast. And no one, nobody deserves to have a writer in their ward. This is my feeling. Or in their family. You don't deserve to have a writer for a parent, or really, it just is terrible to know a writer at all. And so I'm keenly aware that I need to have boundaries in protecting other people and keeping their experiences so that church is a safe place for them, as well as being a safe place for me. As far as speaking up in church, I do that quite a bit. And I don't really hold back. I like what Carol Lynn said about speaking with both love and power, kindness and power. I can't remember how she put it, but I hope that I do that. The Apostle Paul talked about speaking the truth in love. And I feel like in the church, we have people who are, very intense and can speak the truth, but have not love. And that I feel like we have people who are just nice up the wazoo, but aren't speaking necessarily how they really feel. And I gravitate toward people like Jana Spangler has kind of been honest and vulnerable about being that person, saying, this is where I'm at right now. And then finding that people might gravitate toward her after church and speak quietly and say, thank you for saying that, because I was thinking it but didn't say it. You know what? I'm happy to be the person who says it. I'm happy to be that person because I don't have anything to lose in the church. I'm the only member of the church in my family. There's no social pressure on me from parents or a spouse or my own children to be Orthodox in a particular way. So perhaps that's something that I can do for other people, is to voice what they're not able to.
I love the mindfulness that you all show, and quite honestly, the respect and care you give to those around you. It's very clear that, the way you're navigating your own journeys and sort of, like we were talking about, personalizing or empowering, that you do so with actually those around you very much in your mind. It's very, very admirable. It's bringing up a lot for me in the way of how our culture could be in the face of differences, honestly, because I think we can be very impatient and judgmental around when we are faced with people who are different. We can be very dismissive. And I love this idea of actually engaging with those who may be different and treating them with love and kindness, and having sort of this openness and regard for someone without reading into intention too much. Yeah.
Well, if I could just briefly follow up and say, I think you're being overly generous to me. And if you asked people in my ward, is Jana really like that? They might have something else to say. Because maybe I'm a little too outspoken. And
well, it sounds like it's that mix, right? It's that mix of authenticity and trying actually to be truthful, and show the larger truth, but also with a spirit and with a nature of, not being antagonistic, not having an air or an energy or a persona about you that makes people sort of fear or know you're in the room and it's coming, right?
Exactly. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, let's play a little game called play the therapist. So Jana, and Carol Lynn, I'm going to read at least 2 comments made by listeners, and I just want whoever wants to unmute themselves and provide some type of support to our listeners. It can be encouragement, it can be suggestions, because we love the interactive nature of Facebook Live and how people are able to post comments or questions real time while we're talking. So Clark writes, I can sympathize with the loneliness and feeling isolated at church during lessons. Staying silent and listening to things that have been proven false or incorrect is spiritually rough and feels morally wrong. The hallways seem like the best place to retreat to. Which one of you wants to unmute and give a response to Clark? And it could be multiple people. Just take turns. Jana,
So I'll take a shot at it. I can so sympathize with this. It's so hard to feel like you have the choice of just sitting there and taking it, or opening your mouth and offending half the room. That is a really hard thing to do, and sometimes it does feel like you need to retreat. I had the opportunity last year to be at a gathering with Richard Bushman, and I asked the question, how, as a teacher, how do I teach authentically and still honor people? That was really on my mind at the time, and I loved his answer. He said, well, first of all, it's kind of like talking to your kids about sex. If you're nervous, they're nervous. And I thought that was great advice, is to just bring an air of confidence to whatever you do. And then the second thing he said is, become a scholar. Don't quote Richard Bushman, quote Emma Smith. Go to the source. And so I do think you have to tread lightly. I don't think it's the place to just pick a fight and start telling everyone it's false. It's false. I know better. Because if we're all honest, it's way more complex and sticky than anyone knows about what's true and false. So it's not the place to pick a fight, is in my experience. But could you bring up something? I always think the safest thing is to say, in my experience, and talk about your own experience, because who can argue? I'm not getting in a tit for tat over whether something happened historically or not. But it's just, this is my feeling and my experience with something. So I always feel like that is good territory to speak up on. And with the other stuff, just, hey, I just read this quote from Emma Smith. I mean, you're in pretty good territory if you've got a documented quote that you may want to share. Just tread lightly. Don't do it in a spirit of trying to pick a fight. Maybe just say, hey, I'm wondering what people feel about this. I read this thing. What do you think? I mean, that spirit of just really hearing what other people feel and doing it in the best way possible is, I've found in my experience, and like I said, I've done it wrong a million times. I feel like it goes best when I do it that way.
Yep.
Carol Lynn, what would you add in thoughts for Clark? Anything you'd add?
I think I would just say that I feel quite comfortable keeping my mouth shut a lot. And as I said before, I would never say anything to embarrass a teacher, even if there was something said that I felt really was wrong. And I just use my intuition to feel. here's where I can really contribute something, or here's where it wouldn't make much difference anyway, and there's no reason to rock the boat here. People in general know what I'm about, know what I think about most things, and when I feel that it's appropriate, I'm very clearly able to articulate. And plenty of times I just keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Jana Riess, anything you want to add?
Well, I guess I would say to Clark that sometimes the hallway is where we need to be. And sometimes there are other people in the hallway that might need to talk to you too. And you can have gossip doctrine class together. That's what we call it. And sometimes those are the best conversations. And I guess I would just add that we don't have to say everything that comes into our head all the time. And I'm reminding myself of this as I say it out loud. I tend to be outspoken, perhaps to a fault, and say everything. And I'm learning that that's not necessarily always the most helpful and constructive thing for other people. You know, the church is supposed to be the body of Christ. And we have this beautiful passage in 1 Corinthians about every part of the body being needed, every part being valuable, and no part being able to look at another and say, you are not valuable. And I think in our actions, ideally, we need to treat everybody that we come into contact with in that same spirit. That teacher may have said something that I disagree with, but that teacher also took time to prepare that lesson and is a dedicated person, loves the gospel just as much as I do, possibly more. And people need to be treated as people first, and their ideas are important, but they're not the most important thing about them.
Yeah.
Love it. Margi, you want to read Sherry's comment and then ask the therapist what they think?
It's very lonely when you realize you don't believe the dominant narrative anymore and disagree with things like the LGBT treatment. I could only speak kindly and openly and nuanced for 4 to 5 years before I couldn't go anymore because I was afraid to offend or hurt others. I miss the community, but this is where I am at. What would you say to Sherry? How about we go with Carol Lynn first?
I so understand that. I really do. And I might possibly be correct in saying that if I did not have a voice, that I might not be able to continue always to participate. If I felt that I really was not valued in what I had to say, I think there are a lot of ways to spend your energy. I have so many friends who have essentially said, you know, why would I want to spend my energy here where it seems not to be valued, when I can go out and do other kinds of things where I really feel that my thoughts are being valued. I so totally understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that people have to have as strong a platform as I have by fortune, by fate, by fluke, by whatever. I've been able to.
By brilliance.
All that too, and all the cuteness. But if I didn't have a platform like and I have developed it carefully. I've paid my dues in going very, very carefully and slowly and authentically. But what am I saying here? I feel more comfortable than I otherwise would, because I know that my voice has been heard by many, and that it will continue to be heard by many.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Carol Lynn.
Yeah. How about Jana Riess or Jana Spangler? Would you like to respond at all to Sherry?
Sure. I mean, I totally honor where Sherry is. And, you know, as I work with people, because I do specialize in my life coaching business and people in faith transition. And I mean, what I would say to anybody is one of the biggest gifts and one of the most important things as we're going through faith transition is to just honor our inner voice, honor what is happening with us. And, I think that is the most important thing. And when something becomes unhealthy for you to be engaging in, honor that. And whether it's a sabbatical or a permanent thing, do what your gut is telling you to do to be healthy. Absolutely. So I honor wherever anyone wants to be. I would also say that sometimes we have a fantasy of, if I make the right choice about staying or going, then my life will be roses. and I would just like to say that I think that anyone who finds themselves in this place should probably recognize that whatever choice you make, there is emotional fallout. There are things that are going to be difficult, whether you decide to stay and engage or step away. And, reach out to a therapist or a coach or anyone to help you work through those things, because I just feel like everyone can use emotional tools to help deal with the fallout of whatever your decision is. And it can be, as painful as it can be a beautiful opportunity to get to know yourself better, to learn more about authenticity, learn more about yourself and honoring yourself. So that's my 2 cents.
Lovely. How about you, Jana Riess?
I don't have too much more to add to that, except to say that Sherry's going to know for herself more than anyone will know for her what is the best path for her right now. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the best path forever. Like Jana Spangler said, it may be just a time away. It may be a permanent break, and it's hard to know that. And she probably shouldn't put the pressure on herself right now to try to figure out that level of exactly, defining the relationship, the DTR, right? It takes a long time. In the research that I've been doing and the survey data we have, John had asked, are more people leaving the church? And yes, it's pretty clear more people are leaving the church, particularly those born after 1971. And that is not at all unusual with what's going on with American religion more generally. So when we think about it being a question of Mormon faith transitions, Mormon faith crises, that's a part of what's going on. But the larger story in American religion right now is one of disaffiliation, and Mormonism is just one little piece of that. The reason that I'm bringing this up for her case is just to say that it is easier in many ways than it ever has been before, because there's a community out there. If you do decide to leave the church for a time or forever, there is a support community, and people who leave tend to need that most acutely in the immediate aftermath, but some may need it for a long time. And it's, I think, a good thing that community exists.
Yeah. Great.
Love it.
Should we go with one more question before we head back
Do you like that question?
So we have a question that came in. Carolyn, what is your daily practice to help you stay humble? Anything you would recommend? There is a strong sense of humility with all 3 women. How do you all stay so humble? Is it humility that makes it so you can hold your tongue in church? So
let's do Jana Riess first.
Perfect.
Is it humility that makes it so you can hold your tongue in church? I don't know. Humble is not necessarily the word that I would use to describe myself first and foremost. I don't think that I'm a terrifically prideful person, but I don't think that humility comes naturally or easily to me in the way that it might with other people for whom that just seems to be a beautiful gift. That's not necessarily my beautiful gift. The core of the question about how humility affects our interactions, I once heard Martin Marty speaking, and he just historian of American religion, I should say, kind of the grandfather right now of American religious history. And he said that everyone has a PhD in something. And that struck me so much. Everyone has a PhD in something. It might be how to judge figure skating. It might be plumbing. It might be how to build a suitcase. But everyone has a PhD in something. And when you approach any kind of interaction, whether it's at the church or in your job or in writing a book, with the assumption that you are the expert and that someone else needs to know what you know, the conversation is doomed as a conversation. That's not going to be a conversation. If you're truly interested in having conversations with people, you honor that expertise in them and that beauty in them, and try to seek it out, to try to find out what their particular gift is. Maybe that's humility. I don't know.
Yeah.
Love that.
That's great.
Love that.
John, do you just say love it and love that after everything? It's very affirming. Yeah.
Yes, I do. That's all I do.
feel like I should say something completely
When
off
he
the
feels
wall,
it,
just
he's
to
just
see
feeling
if
it a
you
lot.
would say that.
No, this is genuine. I think we cherry picked our panel today, thanks to Jerry Redshaw. All right, Carolyn, would you mind bragging about your humility and telling us the sources from whence it comes?
Humility absolutely is a quality that ought to be really revered. And I think we can look around our country today and wish that we could see a little more humility in certain high places. But as far as we're talking about in the church, and certainly humility, absolutely, always. But I wonder if sometimes our Mormon community perhaps regards humility as something that doesn't necessarily should be blended with power. I didn't say that quite well, but we have this culture of niceness. We have this culture of, oh, I'm only such and such, I'm only so and so, da da da. I really believe that if more of us kind of kept our humility in one hand and in the other hand developed some power and some belief that we have not only the right, but we have the obligation of participating in a powerful way and speaking out and raising our hands and standing up and writing and objecting or affirming or doing whatever we feel to blend our innate humility with some power that maybe is foreign to Mormondom in some particular ways, because we're so reverent of the power that we see in front of us at General Conference time, or we're so reverent of however we view power that is theirs and not ours.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of, boy, you know, I'm still thinking about it. We had a sacrament meeting that was given by the young women, and then a few months later, a sacrament meeting given by the young men. And here are all these wonderful people. And the young women themselves were powerful, strong human beings. I really had a good feeling about them. But the young men had a theme that I have been called to speak in the name of God. And women will never quite be given that. So I'm just throwing out here various ways in which I think our idea of humility and of power might be better married together in both men and women.
I love that.
She said it.
Love that.
Yeah.
Because I do. That's why I say it.
I think so.
I really do. I do. I don't love how we think of humility as sort of being docile or being, that's not humility to me. Humility does best with some other layers to it. It's actually a lot deeper than this sort of, I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to just sort of take it in. It has wisdom to it. It has strength and power. I absolutely love it.
Jana Spangler, anything you wanted to add to Carol Lynn's and Jana Riess's insight?
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know that humility would be my go-to adjective for myself either, although of course I would aspire. It's a lovely thing. I would just say that for me, I think it comes more from just trying to be loving and respectful than humble. I listened to an interview with Richard Rohr right at the beginning of my shelf crashing, and he was just talking about people who start to see ego being wrapped up in religion and how off-putting that can be, and how if we leave in that, we run a great risk of becoming the mirror image of what we hate and what we're reviling against. And it really resonated with me. And one of the phrases he used is, he said, just look at everything through a lens of love. And I can't tell you how important that has been to my journey. When someone does something that feels offensive, or they don't get me, or I want to, I just have to take a step back and say, you know what, that person was doing it out of love. And so I just try to do that. I fail a lot, but I really try to just put everything through a lens of love and not make assumptions about what people are doing or saying or whatever. So I would say that. And then I also would just say quickly that I think understanding faith stages, the work of Fowler, Ken Wilber, Thomas McConkie's book of Navigating Mormon Faith Crisis, that understanding, because I'm not always really, really good at just doing the love thing. I try, but I also have to do the understanding thing in my head. I really, it's kind of a go-to for me. And so understanding faith stages has helped me access compassion. It has helped me access that lens of love when I have a greater understanding of what's happening to me and others.
Beautiful.
Love it. The listener who asked that last question writes, that is exactly what I needed to hear today, referring to all three of you. You have answered my prayers today with your thoughtful responses. So nice job, panelists, being an answer to someone's prayer. I'm not surprised. Okay, let's do another lightning round. We're going to change our approach a tiny bit. And I'm just going to ask you guys to give some brief answers, again, sort of in a lightning round, just to kind of explore a little bit more, your orthodoxy and your unorthodoxy. So I'll begin, and we'll start with Jana Riess. In what ways are you orthodox? So we're referring particularly to beliefs here. Just list 5 or however many orthodox beliefs that you retain in your Mormon engagement. You talked about this a bit, but go ahead and just throw out some of the most important ways you consider yourself to be orthodox, please.
I have a very solid testimony, and I have all my life, of God. And even when I grew up in a family where I had a father who was an atheist and a mother who was an agnostic, I believed in God. I cannot explain why. I believe in Christ's resurrection. For me, that has been one of the most beautiful, enduring Christian doctrines, and is filled with what I find to be an enlightening paradox. In Mormonism, as I said, I have loved the Book of Mormon. For me, my conversion was very tied to my experiences with the Book of Mormon and my feelings about it. Historicity aside, I find it to be a tremendously wise and helpful book. I guess we'll get to the unorthodoxy questions in a minute, but probably those would be the core elements of my testimony, and we can,
All right, beautiful. Carol Lynn, tell us about your orthodoxy.
We're just speaking of beliefs at this moment.
Yep, we'll do praxy next, but now it's doxy.
Okay. But I am totally on board with the insistence that every human on the face of this earth is of divine origin. And I also love it that every sentient being is part of the divine plan, so that we are inundated with divinity wherever we look. And that really, when we look into the eyes of another human being, we are seeing the face of God. I would wish that some of these things might be given a little stronger emphasis, but it's there enough that I know that the LDS teachings are to see the divine everywhere. And I have, while I have read a great deal from the luminaries of other traditions, I personally am very comfortable in saying Christ is the person that I am choosing to be my file leader. And, you know, there are various things around all of those stories that I'm not quite sure what to do with, but that he is our brother and leader, and has done something remarkable that we could not have done for ourselves in opening a door of some kind. I'm comfortable with that, and so that part of it all, I'm very much with. And just the concept that everything begins and ends with love, and I do find that as a consistent thread in Mormondom. So that is what I would say.
Beautiful. Jana Spangler.
Yeah, I would definitely say that my praxis is much more ortho than my doxy. I think that there's not a whole lot that I hang my hat on with orthodoxy these days, other than I do believe in the power of love and, you know, service and all of that to change people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like there is something out there, whether it's the spirit, intuition, whatever it is, that can help guide me to good things. And beyond that, I've just kind of given up on really trying to figure it out. I'm not a yes, I'm not a no. I'm getting much more comfortable with I just don't know. And it's actually becoming less and less important to me, other than just to honor those things that really lift me up.
Beautiful.
Okay, let's do the other half of that. Let's go to unorthodox, and we'll start with Jana Riess. In what ways would you say you're unorthodox?
I have authority issues with the way that the church is often trying to perpetuate its own authority. You know, to some extent, that is a healthy thing. I believe that we have prophets and apostles for a reason. However, I do not believe in the 14 fundamentals of following the prophet according to Ezra Taft Benson. I do not believe that they are to be followed against your own conscience. In fact, I think that is a very dangerous heresy that we could do much better work at stamping out in the church. People who believe that if they follow counsel that they feel to be misguided, or they have not received any kind of personal testimony of, that they'll be blessed anyway by going against their own conscience. You know, there's nothing scriptural about that. We don't have scriptural examples of God honoring our decision to choose someone else's moral path. Or we don't have scriptures that would say that we're not accountable for our own choices. And so that's an element where I am in pretty fundamental disagreement with some of the recent rhetoric from the church over the last 40 or 50 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thanks, Jana. How about you, Carol Lynn?
Well, I have a sense that whatever we call God is much, much larger than the Heavenly Father that I hear referred to in church all the time. And I really believe that of course, the divine is as much female as male, and that God is working in every corner of this world in trying to invite humanity to become more and more godly. And consequently, I look around and I truly feel that, and what I said at the beginning is that I appreciate Mormondom for trying very hard to create Zion. I think that we are one wonderful corner of God's vast, vast Zion. So maybe that's something that would separate me from many.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That was a very diplomatic way of saying what I think you just said, and I thought it was beautiful.
Thanks, Mom.
Jana Spangler.
Yeah, I would love to echo what both of these ladies have said, because they have said it much more diplomatically and eloquently than I think I could. And I agree with them both wholeheartedly. I guess the only other thing that I would say that sets me apart is that I just don't find the beauty in certainty that I once did. I recognize the benefits of it to help people feel safe, and I think there are wonderful, beautiful things in it, but I also feel like it can be limiting, and that uncertainty opens up a whole new world that I think makes us very, very uncomfortable in our Mormon culture. But that I'm pretty unorthodox in not valuing certainty.
Yeah.
All right, this is great. Now let's jump to orthopraxy. So, Jana Riess, in what ways are you living Mormonism as an Orthodox member might?
Well, I come from a family where we've had some issues with drug addiction and alcohol addiction stretching back generations. And so for me, the word of wisdom has never been something that I have questioned in any serious way. I mean, I of course wonder what the heck is going on about coffee and tea. I think many of us think that that's possibly a little different, and our survey research indicates that many younger Mormons feel that way as well. But at its core, I mean, that's a sacrifice that I'm happy to make for my people. Even if I don't understand it, it's certainly not harming anyone. And I have felt some health benefits as promised from the word of wisdom and following the word of wisdom. So yeah, that's one element in which I might even be a little bit more intense about it. I found out in the survey that the vast majority actually of Mormons do drink caffeinated soda. Now we know, and I don't. And I was very surprised to see that, so that was interesting. Other elements in which I am possibly more orthopractic, the Sabbath would be one of them. And that's because I'm a selfish and lazy person. I love the Sabbath because I'm a workaholic. And, John, you were talking about this struggle at the beginning, that for many of us, we are constantly on our devices. Sunday for me has been a chance where most Sundays, especially if I'm not traveling, I don't turn on my computer. I will sometimes check Facebook very briefly on my phone or something like that. But it's a pretty unprogrammed day in a way that I just don't have during the rest of the week. I'd love to say that I use that time wisely and, I'm deep into the scriptures or something, but really for me, it's more about resting and spending time in nature, being with family and friends. I find that very rejuvenating.
I love that. I actually have a question on that later because I was so curious about that, but I love hearing about that.
We're running out of time, so we have to get there. So
that has to
bring
be
that question up next. Okay, Carol Lynn, how are you orthoprax?
I really behave in just about every way that you would like for a nice Mormon woman to behave. I do try to drink green tea because it's on the list of everything that I read that's good for the body. And while I'm an activist for gay rights, I'm really quite comfortable with very conventional sexual behavior. I am not one to for myself or anybody else to say, oh, the Mormon mores of sexuality should just be thrown away. Let's see, what else? My behavior is pretty boring in terms of, if you want to try to catch me doing something that's clearly non-Mormon.
All right. I know whenever there's swearing on Mormon Stories, you've been kind enough to remind me that that's not always appreciated.
I got after John one time. I did.
We appreciated it. Jana Spangler, orthopraxy.
Yeah, I'm pretty ortho in my praxy. I will definitely take a Sunday off if I'm feeling depleted and I don't feel guilt over it. So maybe that's not quite so orthoprax. But I I try to be a good citizen. If I'm going to be part of this, and if I feel like I'm going to have any influence whatsoever, I think it's important to be a good citizen. So I'm willing to make whatever sacrifices those are. And that being said, I think if I left tomorrow, there would be a few things that would change, but not much. So it's just partially who I am and partially respect.
Excellent. Okay, and we'll do this really briefly. It's kind of sensitive for people to admit ways that they're unorthodox. So Jana, whatever you're comfortable sharing there, and you don't have to share if you're not comfortable. For some reason, Mormons are really uncomfortable with unorthopraxy. So,
Well, I didn't even realize this until Carol Lynn mentioned swearing, but I guess I'll have to put that in there. I have a big swearing problem. Although as a child, I was never taught that this was a problem because I didn't grow up Mormon, and that was just part of the air that we breathed. So it comes out when I'm feeling particularly passionate about something, whether it's frustration, certainly, or even excitement. My first inclination is to swear, and so that's just who I am. Other things that I'm probably not as jazzed about, I never feel guilty about skipping church if I need to skip church. And I will sometimes go to church when I'm on vacation or I'm traveling for work, which is often, but I'll usually go to another church because for me that's very helpful and rejuvenating. That's part of what enables me to stay Mormon, is that I am always in dialogue with other religious traditions and kind of doing the Brigham Young thing of anything is truthful, I will claim that for Mormonism. I do that.
Love it.
Yep.
Carol Lynn?
I might not be as consistent a faster as one should be.
All right.
I do try to. I know that it's a good thing for the body and for the spirit, but I'm not as consistent as most really Orthodox Mormons would be on that. And I probably don't keep the Sabbath as in the same way as many do. In that, what I consider my work is of a spiritual nature, and so I sometimes wonder, well, why can't I do this on the Sabbath? Because this is a very spiritual thing for me. But I can't think of anything that would be kind of shocking that I would choose to confess just now.
Are you comfortable just sharing your approach to temple attendance? Is that something you want to talk about just really briefly?
I personally have not requested a temple recommend for many, many years. That is just not one of the places where I am enthusiastic about finding God there, finding my mother God there. But that's all I want to say on that.
Thank you for that vulnerability and candor. Jana Spangler.
So like Jana Riess, I do like to church hop. Or go to Oasis or just other gatherings. I do that from time to time. I think for me, I pray in a very unorthodox way. I just never found the connection that I wanted through the Mormon formula for prayer. And so I would say that the minute that I let myself out of those bounds and started praying in my own way and incorporating meditation and incorporating other things, that spiritual connection really opened up to me. So that's pretty different. And I would also say that, some would find this more shocking than others. I think I'm still within the realm of what's fairly acceptable, but I have changed the way that we've done tithing. And so I pay on a different standard than I used to, and it's lower than it used to be, but it's still 10% in a way that I feel good about. But the difference I give to charities of my choice outside of the church. And it's something I've been able to negotiate with my husband, who is very Orthodox, that we both feel good about, that we can still feel like we're giving a 10% tithe and do it in a hybrid way that is, I have to say, the first year we did it, it was so meaningful to me to be able to just more in a in a really tangible way, live the teachings of King Benjamin or Christ in really just giving to people who are in need.
Love it. Okay, we're running short on time. We promised Jana we'd end right at 6:30 Utah time. So for a few more questions, we're just going to ask one of you. We won't ask all three of you to answer. So really briefly, Margi, who do you want to direct your question to?
How do you do that?
I know it's hard.
We could just do really short. If this is really,
Okay, go
I'm
ahead.
super curious.
This
and
may
I
be
think
Jana's.
people-
Okay.
Okay, so just real brief then, ladies. But I'm really curious how you approach Sundays and what like a really lovely Sunday for you would feel like. What would it include? What wouldn't it include? And let's start with Jana Riess on that.
Okay, my ideal Sunday, we would have 90-minute church on my ideal Sunday. That would be pretty great. I think that's plenty of time. And the rest of the day, because I'm an extrovert, would probably involve having people over. And I like to have potlucks. We have a lot of potlucks here at our house. Sometimes we invite people from my husband's church. He's Episcopalian. Sometimes we invite people from our church. Sometimes we mix it up and have everybody come together and have a big Mormon meal. And music, there has to be music in my fantasy Sunday. That's something that Jana Spangler was talking about, the ways in which we connect with God. And for me, that's very vital, very important, and unfortunately not something that we do at the ward level very well.
Would it be hymns, like that type of music, or?
Some of it would be hymns. There are many hymns that I love. We also have some pretty crazy out there hymns that I'm not really a fan of in the hymnal. But, in the Episcopal Church, they have this wonderful tradition called pub theology, where people just show up at a bar and then bring hymnals and other things and bring their guitars. And there's a piano, like a beer hall piano, and just belt it out. And by that time, they get so drunk that they don't remember that we sang A Mighty Fortress is Our God 3 times already. So we do it the 4th time, and I'm like the only person who's not drinking, but I love those. I think that's amazing. It's a wonderful, wonderful tradition. Just that robust, fantastic singing.
Beautiful.
Love it. Jana, really quickly, since we're bumping up against the time you said you needed to leave, do you kind of need to run and we should say goodbye to you now, or do you have a few more minutes?
I have a few more minutes because I'm a very bad parent. I was supposed to be leaving early so that I could do something with my daughter, and she went to get an x-ray today of a wrist that I said was fine, and that she was complaining about nothing, and it turns out that it was fractured. So right before I sat down to do this interview with you guys, I got the text that it was fractured, and I feel like pretty much the worst mom ever for not taking it seriously and kind of belittling it. So well, maybe not belittling it, but I didn't take it seriously. And so really what you're staving off is my going downstairs and apologizing to my daughter. So yes, let's talk a couple more minutes.
Okay.
I feel really
We have compassion for that, Jana. Can I just say hard calls?
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was nothing. Yeah. I mean, it's just like a hairline fracture, but still. I thought that if it were broken, it would really be dramatic, right?
Right, or be really swollen. We've been there.
Right.
Okay, we'll just do a few more, but thank you. Hope your daughter's okay.
Wait, do we still get to do the Sunday with Carol Lynn?
Yeah, Carol Lynn.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll go to Carol Lynn next.
Now, was this the Sunday as it exists now, how I do it the best that I can, or if I can invent a whole new Sunday?
What do you want to do? What do you want to do?
I was trying to actually ask it in the way of the existing structure, because then I think it's very useful for people to see what you do to add value or for yourself.
This is what I do. And I actually enjoy wearing a skirt to Sunday. To church. I have occasionally worn pants in harmony with that request, but Sunday is the only day that I wear my prettier clothing. So I enjoy because I am not a social butterfly. I don't go out really a lot and in places where you dress up. So I enjoy dressing up and paying more attention to my face than to my hair. And I enjoy going into the chapel and hugging people. I try to get there early so I can go around and be an unofficial greeter and spot people that I think need a hug. I enjoy doing that. And sometimes, well, probably generally, I skip Sunday school to hold Sunday school in the foyer with somebody that I know wants to talk to me. Or I go 2 doors down and visit with Sister Gold, who is a 95-year-old, less than that, 90-year-old widow, and urge her to write her history. I think that's a good thing to do during Sunday school. And then in Relief Society, I enjoy being with the women. And boy, we have some wonderful women in so then the rest of the day, well, I love to read the Sunday paper, just luxuriously. And I love to make phone calls to people that I have been ignoring during the week. And sometimes in church, I start making a list of people I have not been paying attention to. I do some good phone calls during the Sunday. And I read and I catch up in my diary. And I love to watch 60 Minutes. But if they're only going to have 3 brutal episodes, I can't watch them. And I have loved watching Madam Secretary. So there's something on TV that I think feeds me. I'm not unwilling to say this is a good part of my Sabbath. And I probably do more stuff than I ought to on Sunday, rather than just rest and let my mind. I enjoy the Sunday.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for sharing. How about you, Jana Spangler?
So for me, it was much easier when I was imagining my own, but I'll go with this. A good Sunday for me is one where I am able to be in a space that's of my larger self when I show up to church, and I'm able to just love people and not be looking for ways that I'm different than them, but ways that I'm the same and common values and things. Also, when I make a habit of asking my kids when they come home what they liked at church, what they didn't like. I like to give them the opportunity to disagree with things and to validate that, and that's okay, and have their own feelings about things. Most of the time, I just get the one-word answer, it's fine, whatever. But once in a while, it has opened up some really good conversation, and I really cherish that. So in my ideal, I would have more opportunities to have those real conversations with my kids. My oldest is 13, so she's really the only one that it's terribly realistic to have those good conversations, but they've happened, and I love that. Yeah.
Anything after church that you would want to include, or that would really make your Sunday feel good to you?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's quality time with my family and with my kids, and having a real connection with them beyond just we've checked off the box of what we've done and we've gone to church, and but I don't know, if as they get older, I'm sure I'll have more opportunity for this, but just to have a real connection with them or with something bigger than us on a Sunday is just an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, we'll do a few more lightning round questions. The first is, we'll start with you, Jana Riess. If you were to recommend some of your favorite thinkers or voices or mentors for remaining actively engaged in religion or in Mormonism, what are some voices or authors that you would recommend?
Okay, so within Mormonism, I would suggest Adam Miller, very strong thinker. That's a good person to read. And there are so many. Outside of Mormonism, I would echo what Jana Spangler said about Richard Rohr. There's a lot of wisdom there. To that, I would add people like Barbara Brown Taylor. I would love it if we had a whole Mormon groundswell of reading Barbara Brown Taylor, because she's amazing and incredibly wise. Particularly, I would suggest starting with Leaving Church, which was primarily about her decision to leave the Episcopal priesthood, and An Altar in the World is a good one. Oh, Learning to Walk in the Dark would be a good one for many of your listeners. dealing with uncertainty, dealing with when the moorings have kind of disappeared is a good one. And other people that I enjoy reading, Brennan Manning, The Ragamuffin Gospel is outstanding. Madeline L'Engle, I still go back. She's still my favorite writer. Still go back and read her often. I'm going to come back to this question again and again and think, oh, why didn't I mention so-and-so? Rachel Held Evans. There are just so many good writers right now.
If you want to send us a link to some of these names or just the names themselves, maybe an email or text, we'll include them in the show notes if that's okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do
just
that.
a few of them. I wasn't able to type fast enough for some of those. Carol Lynn Pearson, who are the voices in or outside of Mormonism?
I am so behind in being able to give you a good list. The name for somebody who needs a good Mormon voice besides those that have been mentioned, I would remind them that we still have books by Chieko Okazaki, who was addressing a lot of wonderful things years ago that we need to be reminded that certain things have been held up for us that we have not yet achieved. I read books of other traditions like Eckhart Tolle, and I love listening to Eckhart in my ears when I'm out walking. I love things by Deepak Chopra and so many of the Dalai Lama and various leaders of other traditions. I like to try to keep close to them. So that's about all I'm going to say right now.
Excellent. Okay, Jana Spangler.
So in addition to the ones that have already been mentioned, I would just add, it doesn't seem like it might be so applicable to faith journeys, but Brene Brown has been huge for me. I definitely did my Mormonism from a perfectionist standpoint, and her books have really helped me. Gifts of Imperfection and others have just really helped me connect to my authenticity and connect to the gifts that come from imperfection. Loved Sin of Certainty by Peter Enns. That's been huge in my journey. And definitely Richard Rohr has been a gigantic influence on me, so much so that I've enrolled in his living school, which starts in a month. So I'm going to be studying with Richard Rohr for the next 2 years.
Wow, so exciting.
Yeah, so that's, and I mentioned what an influence he was from the beginning of my journey. So there's so many others. It's hard to come up with them, but just a nod to the podcast universe. It was a lifesaver for me when I found all of you, from all of the Open Stories ones to Bill Reel was my first actually podcast I ever stumbled across, where I went, whoa, there are other people like me. So it's been invaluable to me to have all the podcasts available.
Shout out to Dan Witherspoon, Gina Colvin, Natasha Alford Parker as well.
Yep.
Open Stories podcasters. Great.
And you, John.
Oh, thank you. And Margi.
And Margi. And Margi.
Okay, another lightning round question. Jana Riess, this is a hard one. This may be the hardest question I ask all day. Some like to observe or predict that the LDS Church is maybe experiencing a lot of turmoil or even decline in terms of its health or vitality. Do you see that or do you not see that? What do you see in terms of the Church's health and vitality?
I see a very mixed picture from the data and also just observation. It is extremely healthy in many ways compared to what else is going on in religion in America and Europe, and particularly in the ways that we involve young people in serving missions. There's a lot of seminary program, there's a lot of vitality there that can't be downplayed. And I think Mormons tend to take that for granted, actually, that those are, or singles wards, that those are programs that we don't necessarily think about. But when you are looking at what's happening in religion more generally, those are unusually strong. I would say, yes, there is a decline in vitality. There is certainly a sense of frustration on the part of many with the leadership of the church and the membership of the church being at odds on some issues. And, I don't think I think it's hard to overstate this. In the data we saw that the third most important reason for millennials to leave the church was LGBT issues. And LGBT issues did not feature even in the top 10 among reasons for people in the boomer and silent generations to leave the church. That's important. Women's issues are also a factor. Doctrinal issues, not so much, at least not in what we discovered. It was much more experiential and about social things that are happening today. We have never had a leadership that has been this divorced from the membership in terms of age. I think Mormons today tend to forget that we used to have intergenerational leadership and that many apostles started when they were quite young, because we haven't seen that in our lifetimes. And we're now seeing some of the fruits of that. So it's a complicated answer to what I know you intended to be a very quick question, but we're seeing a mixed situation.
Thank you, Jana. Carol Lynn, what are you seeing in your neck of the woods?
I am seeing a fair amount of my friends and people that I know who are just saying, I'm done. I'm not participating in the church anymore. I do see that. But I also see a lot of people who are there for plenty of reasons, besides the issues or even knowing history and all of that. They're there because this is the place where they where they feel good and want to raise their family there. I do see a lot of that. So, being a Libra, I can really say, on the one hand, I see this, and on the other, I do see that. And truly, it seems to me that there is a kind of dance going on that is, what I would consider steps forward and then steps backward. And I think in a large sense of ecclesiastical leadership, there is a retrenchment that I feel is being pretty evident, as opposed to down here where people live. There is a lot of kind of new thought happening, and as has been suggested here, most young people are not agonizing over whether or not we should have gay people in the church. It's just something that is a given. So I see a lot of tension going on between what I would consider progressive and then more tightening down. So that's not a very good answer. I just sort of see a dance going on that I'm just kind of watching and participating in the way, whatever way I feel to.
Thank you. Jana Spangler, you're the only of the three of our panelists who are in the Wasatch Front. What are you seeing along the Wasatch Front?
So I think it's complicated because of who I hang out with. I hang out with with a community of a lot of people who are in this middle way, questioning or are out. And if I'm just taking a pulse from that, I'm going to say that it's rocky. But I also know that the people who are not in that community that I hang out with really don't see much of an issue, even though almost everyone, if you ask a room full of Mormons along the Wasatch Front, if they have experienced a faith crisis, or if they're currently experiencing one, or if someone that they're very close to is experiencing one, almost every hand goes up. Mm-hmm. But I think that most people don't really want to acknowledge that. And I think this is a different conversation after the November policy, to be honest. I think that there was a hit with that one, that I think we're still seeing the fallout of it, because people that I know who have been very in and still are, were really shaken by that. And it's created a shelf item for a lot of people I know who just want to stay in, and it moved a lot of people who were on the edge out. And I think that was kind of a pivotal moment, but I don't know. It's hard to say. Depends on who I'm with, what I think, because discourse communities, it's you can't underestimate their power.
Beautiful.
Right. Okay, final question.
Final question.
Final question. Here it is. So what keeps you going in this effort? What gives you hope? So let's start with Carol Lynn.
The thing that nourishes me the most about remaining where I am is to know that I have a tremendously good give and take with a lot of people. And I hear from a lot of people for whom my work and my presence in the church has been extremely helpful to them. And so that gives me a lot of energy to know that I do have a place and that my voice is being heard. And maybe that's the number one thing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I do look around and see all of the good stuff happening that I have seen before, but I also see a lot of stuff happening that's really breaks my heart. But the fact that I personally have a place and feel that I can move things toward what I consider to be a more loving Zion, that's what gives me energy, keeps me going.
Love it.
Yep. Thank you. How about you, Jana Riess?
And one of the things that keeps me going is the young people in the church. I do understand when, like Sherry had sent that message about needing to take a break, I do understand that sometimes people cannot stay and it's not a healthy place for them to stay.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, as a member of the church, grieve all of those losses because the church is a lesser place for their absence.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience of it is lesser for their absence. So I'm hopeful that many of these incredible young people, young adults that I get to talk to will be able to stay and to enrich our experience. And someday they will be in charge, which will be good.
Great. How about you, Jana Spangler?
Yeah, this is a hard one. Depends on the day. But yeah, I mean, I think that when I feel like I really am being helpful to someone somewhere that is going through this, that I can maybe broaden the tent a little bit, that I can stick up for someone who's on the margins, when I can try to include people. You know, when I see that, it gives me a boost, like, oh, you know, there is a reason for me doing this. And it may sound kind of bleak, but to be honest, the difficulty of it, I am starting to find growth opportunity for myself in that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't want to just run away from what is hard. I don't also want to stay with what is damaging. It is a dance and it is hard to know which is which.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would never say that someone that left just wasn't willing to fight the good fight. I mean, I don't believe that at all.
Right.
But I just think it gives me the chance to really get to know myself and to explore where that line is for me. And I have to check in with myself all the time to see if where I am on that line. Is this serving me? Is the difficulty I'm going through a net positive, or is it not? So
yeah,
I
hear that. Yep.
Jana, give us one resource or website or book for people who want to reach out to you, or something you want your listeners to know about. Give us one resource to let our listeners know. Just as wait, Jana Spangler first.
Oh,
so, sorry, Jana Riess. Jana Spangler.
Okay, so a way to reach out to me personally would be on SymmetrySols, SOLS.com. That is the online practice that Natasha Helfer Parker runs, and I am a life coach with them. And I'm also active on the ATF website. If anyone is on there, feel free to reach out to me.
Thoughtful Faith. Shout out to our friends at Thoughtful Faith.
Yep.
Jana Riess, if you want to let people know about any of your good works, what should people know about?
Good works. That's a different question. Initially, you asked about getting in touch.
No. I meant, your blog, your survey, whatever you want to talk about.
Oh, okay. I see. I'm sorry. So for getting in touch and for some of the work that I've been doing, I write for Religion News Service. I'm a senior columnist, and the column is called Flunking Sainthood. Because I'm also writing 2 books right now, I haven't been as regular with writing on the blog as I should be. And another thing, I'm starting a podcast like everyone else in the whole Mormon studies community. And actually, the podcast is focusing specifically on spirituality. So specifically on some of the things that we've talked about today, hoping to interview even some of the authors that we've talked about today and help to maybe translate some of their work for a Mormon audience who may not know about it, as well as profiling people within the Mormon community who are doing interesting things in the realm of spirituality.
So exciting, Jana.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like every day I found out about someone else starting a podcast. So it's not like it's new, but I hope it will be helpful to some people who want to go deeper within their Mormon identity, but by doing that, by exposing themselves to some of the wisdom and beauty of other thinkers.
Absolutely.
Is it just your own podcast, or is someone sponsoring you?
It's sponsored by the Faith Matters Foundation. They're also doing a podcast with Terrell Gibbons, and I think with Thomas McConkie, actually, that Jana Spangler was talking about.
All right.
Exciting.
We'll look for it. Good luck. Carol Lynn Pearson, what can our listeners or viewers know about the good work you're doing or have done?
The last good work that I did was the book that we mentioned, The Ghost of Eternal Polygamy. And so I'm just riding the waves of the things that has brought me, which have been very good. And I'm spending a lot of time in this long process of preparing for my death, which is not imminent, but I'm trying to clean up. I'm trying to clean up all of the, the things that we kind of ignore. I'm really conscious. Trying to be conscious about how will things look when I am on my deathbed. How will I feel about all of the things and the people that I am leaving? And I'm paying attention.
Love it.
Yeah.
Other books by Carol Lynn Pearson include No More Goodbyes and Goodbye, I Love You, and lots of other ones. So many good books with poetry and essays. How many books now, Carol Lynn Pearson?
Oh, if you count plays and my funny little notebooks, over 40.
And your website is?
CarolLynnPearson.com.
All right. Go buy everything she's got. It's worth it.
Oh, please do.
Jana, did you want to say something? Jana Spangler.
I did. This is not something I've created, but I just think this is a great resource for your listeners along the Wasatch Front. I just want to mention 2 things that have been really, really helpful to me. One of which is Thomas McConkie's organization that he has started, Lower Lights. You can connect with them at lowerlightslc.org. And it has been a wonderful place for me. Thomas does mindfulness gatherings and has all kinds of other classes and things that are available, and it's a growing community. It's been really, really helpful. And the second one would be Faith Again, and you can connect to them at faithagain.org, and that's a group that meets monthly. And in fact, they've got Adam Miller coming tonight, so they have people who come through and have really wonderful discussions, and that could be really helpful to people who I would say the Faith Again is kind of, it runs the gamut. A lot of people are middle way Mormons there, but there are a lot of people who have left and still find value in that. And Lower Lights is for anyone who wants to have a community that is striving to connect to more.
Perfect.
It's a great place.
Great resources.
All right.
Thank you, Jana.
Well, we want to thank Jana Riess, Carol Lynn Pearson, and Jana Spangler for coming on the podcast. You've been wonderful, all 3 of you. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing your unique perspectives.
Thank you for having us.
Loved it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys, gals. In addition, I want to thank our listeners, our Facebook Live participants, everyone who's joined us today. Always, we want to thank Cody Layton and Amy Grubbs of the OSF staff for making all this possible. And most importantly, our donors. We could not do this with the Open Stories Foundation without your support. We rely on your support to keep going. So if you enjoy this work, but you don't contribute, please consider a monthly donation, $10, $20, $30 a month, whatever you can afford. It's what keeps us all alive. So please contribute when you can. I love you, sweetie.
Love you too.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. Thank you for being with us.
Take care, everybody. Check you guys out next time on Mormon Stories. Please stay tuned. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.